बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अस्सलाम वालेकुम। आप देख रहे हैं डिप्लोमेटिक एंड करंट अफेयर्स विद डॉक्टर मुनव्वर हुसैन। नाज़रीन, आज जिस मौजू पे मैं बात करना चाहूँगा उसका चर्चा पूरी दुनिया में और बिलखुसूस पाकिस्तान में बहुत ज़्यादा है। वो ईरान की इंटरनल सिचुएशन के ऊपर है जो इस वक्त हिजाब रो चल रहा है उसके ऊपर। चूँकि हम बारो करते हैं इंफॉर्मेशन वेस्टर्न मीडिया से और काफ़ी मिसपरसेप्शंस हैं, तो आज हमने बहुत ही कीमती टाइम लिया है डॉक्टर फवाद एज़दी का, जो कि प्रोफेसर हैं तेहरान यूनिवर्सिटी में और एक बहुत बड़ी थिंक टैंक को लीड कर रहे हैं ईरान के अंदर, जो मुख्तलिफ़ शोबों के ऊपर काम कर रही है और पूरी दुनिया के साथ कनेक्टेड है। थैंक यू वेरी मच डॉक्टर फवाद फॉर योर काइंड टाइम. This is our YouTube channel and we want to understand the internal situation of Iran, what is going on in Iran, because there is perception here in our part of the world that protests are going on and the government is curtailing and curbing the liberty of the Iranian people. So what is the reality on the ground? Please explain.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you for taking the time and doing this. The reality is quite different from what you see on Western media outlets. One of the aims of American channels, British channels, other Western governments has been to demonize Iran. And we remember the reason for demonization. Demonization generally is needed when they want to take harsh measure against the country. This is something that worries Iranians, that this level of demonization is going to lead to something worse later on. When you look at the history of Iran, you realize that Iran is a very diverse country.
Exactly.
And there are different people with different backgrounds live in the country. We have historically a segment of the Iranian population that is religious. There's a segment of the Pakistani population that's religious, or other Muslim countries. In Iran, this segment of religious people established a new government in 1979 through a revolution. So as you remember, in 1953, the Americans orchestrated a coup in the country. Mossadegh was overthrown, the Shah was brought back by the British and the American government. From 1953 till 1979, Shah was a serious dictator, brutal dictator, ruled the country and plundered the country's resources. What happened in 1979 was that the Iranian people said that's enough. The revolution became an Islamic revolution because the forces that managed to overthrow the Shah were Muslim, were Islamically oriented. The leader was Imam Khomeini, who was a cleric, was an Islamic scholar. At that time, in Iranian society, you had a segment of the population that was not religious. And this segment of the population that was not religious could divide them in two categories. One category actually became religious because they liked the revolution, they didn't like the Shah's government, they liked Imam Khomeini, although they were not very religious before the revolution, they became. I understand in Pakistan, we have some communities that became interested in the Iranian revolution and they became more religious in Pakistan. So if that can happen in Pakistan, it certainly. So we had the second segment of the people who were not religious before the revolution. They continued to have this Western lifestyle. What happened? The U.S. government has been trying to overthrow the Iranian government since the victory of the Islamic Revolution. And they have tried different methods. For example, in early days of the revolution, they had Saddam Hussein of Iraq attacking Iran. So they wanted to overthrow the revolution through use of force. Then economic sanctions. Iran has been able to go around economic sanctions. The latest practice is trying to have Iranians fight each other. So the idea that Americans had is that this religious segment of society, it would be a good idea to be fighting the non-religious segment and vice versa. And this issue of hijab was something interesting because there was this actual divided opinion on this issue. It was a issue that was part of the society. So from the 2-3 years ago, they started these campaigns of ladies opposing hijab. It was orchestrated outside Iran. The main figure behind this is a lady named Masih Ali Nejad. If you have been watching Western news outlets in the last number of months, I'm sure you have seen this lady, Masih Ali Nejad. And he works for the US government. There's this site, usaspending.gov, usaspending.gov. And you type her name. This is an official US government site that shows who is getting paid on contracts from the US government. So you type Masih Ali Nejad. Last time I checked, she has received $614,000. $614,000. This is the last number I saw. So she's actually on the payroll of the U.S. government. She's leading this anti-hijab
row in Iran.
Idea, and she managed to attract a percentage of Iranian ladies to follow her lead. And that resulted in the riots that we had in the last number of months. From the second segment of non-religious people, once they realized this is a Western project to create chaos in Iran, they abandoned following the leadership outside Iran. Because although they don't have this Islamic lifestyle, they don't want their country to be governed by some person that's dictated from outside. So they may not be religious, but they still like their country. So a lot of people stayed away in the early days of riots. And then a small, very tiny segment of population that had linkage to outside opposition continued. They engaged in violence. Iran lost more than 60 police officers.
I see.
And the reason they were lost was because they were not armed. The reason they were not armed was because one tactic of this color revolution, sort of revolutions that are dictated from outside, is that you increase the number of deaths. That's how you manage to keep the international media focused. And the Iranian government decided not to give them that opportunity. So the police officers would go without arms. That's how they got killed. If police officers have arms, they would defend themselves if their life is threatened. And so this is the situation we have now. It's been more than a month that things are quiet. The aim of using that method to overthrow the Islamic government in Iran has failed, like other projects that they have had. But, Americans, a segment of the intelligence community in the US, a segment of other agencies in the US are created to cause difficulties in Iran. So they will continue their anti-Iran practices, and the people of Iran will continue to resist. So you have the religious segment that is resisting. You have the non-religious segment that is opposing US hegemony. They are resisting. And then you have a tiny minority of population with linkage to the outside powers and use of violence that cause difficulties for themselves and the country, and that was managed. And some of them were taken into prison, and after a couple of months, mostly all of them were released.
Why Iranian point of view is not presented in media? Is it the failure of Iranian government?
Yes,
if it is not the reality, because on media we are observing that majority of the people, they are protesting on the road, especially the young people. But the figure and the explanation that you are giving, it is quite opposite to that.
Yes, it's not the majority. It's not even a minority. You cannot call them a minority because the numbers are so small. You look at the pictures that Western media outlets show. Generally see 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, not more than that. So during the height of the demonstrations, you would be driving around Tehran and see no demonstrations because there are like 20 people in one corner and then 10 people in some other
And
corner.
they are usually paid by the Americans.
Either directly or indirectly, they have these linkages
Okay.
to outside powers. We have a number of channels that is sort of telling them what to do, engage in violence.
So still people, they are supporting Iranian Islamic regime.
The first segment of population that's religious, they continue to be supporting. And that's how the Iranian government has managed to survive. So you have a significant portion of the population that's supporting the government.
Any empirical evidence of it?
The demonstrations for the 44th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. So people who are viewing your channel, if they go to Iranian news outlets, the ones that are inside Iran, millions of people showed up. So you compare millions of people to 10 or 20 people here and there.
Why, countries like Pakistan and other Muslim nations, they don't have the information regarding the reality, if it is the reality?
You know, this is a failure of the Iranian government that has not been able to present the truth the way it is. There are some news outlets like Press TV, but it's difficult for a lot of people to access those news outlets. What should have been done is that intellectuals, university professors like yourself, others should have been invited in Iran to see for themselves. So, when I tell you things, you may accept what I'm telling you, you may not accept. But when you come and see for yourself, that's going to have a better effect. So there are things that could be done to manage the propaganda, and I think the experience of the last number of months hopefully will result in a mechanism where truth is separated from falsehood. The people who are actually trying to find out what's going on will have an opportunity to get to it.
Professor, if we see the Iranian and Pakistan relationship, do you think that this relationship can be flourished in future? What challenges you are observing or understanding between the two nations, and what are the prospects as far as economic relationship is concerned? Because Iran remained under economic crisis, Pakistan is going through economic crisis. So can these economic crises let them to come closer to each other and to help each other?
I see much more opportunities than challenges. Iran and Pakistan relations have been good. There's economic ties, political ties, religious ties, cultural ties. I was telling our friends here that this is the first time I'm visiting Pakistan. And then as I enter the airport, I can read all the Urdu signs because the language is quite similar. So because of these linkages, I think you can increase the level of cooperation significantly. There are some obstacles as well. The US government has been putting pressure on the Pakistani government not to have good relations with Iran. The issue of the pipeline, the gas pipeline, would have been something beneficial for the Pakistani people, and we don't have it because of the pressure from the US government. It could be, initially was the idea was to have the gas go through Pakistan to India, and that would have given Pakistan leverage if Pakistan provided gas to its territory to India. So I think having better relations with Iran is going to be beneficial for the people of Pakistan as well. The resources that Iran has can make the lives of ordinary Pakistani citizens better. And I think the Pakistani government officials has realized that. The problem we have had with Iran-Pakistan relations are generally interference from third parties, like the United States. So if the Pakistani government can refrain from accepting those demands and look at the interest of the Pakistani people, I think you can see significant increase in cooperation between two countries. Iran wants that. The Pakistani government, I think, is interested. We just have to find ways of making sure this happens.
Any one single sentence on Kashmir?
You know, Iran's leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has repeatedly championed the cause of people in Kashmir. And throughout many years. Iran has normal relations with India. India buying oil from Iran. Iran needs that sale. But that hasn't prevented Iranian leaders from championing the cause of Kashmir.
Professor, what would be your message regarding Pakistani people?
You know, we like Pakistani people a lot, and I think a lot of people in Pakistan like Iran. I was seeing a Pew public opinion poll. Pew is an American public opinion company.
Well known.
You know, I think the government of Iran, especially during the Raisi administration, is interested in increased cooperation with all Iran's neighbors. This is the policy that he announced before he became president. One of his foreign policy objectives is this. To increase relations and have better relations. Pakistan is obviously a very important neighbor of Iran. And given the fact that Iran is under sanctions, Iran is trying to go around sanctions. And one way to do that is to have better economic and political relations with the neighborhood. For the Pakistani government, I think there are resources in Iran that could be utilized to improve the lives of ordinary Pakistani citizens.